Somewhere in America, on a kitchen table you would never look at twice, there sits a roll of postage stamps. Not gold, not crypto, not a Bloomberg terminal glowing in a glass tower 40 floors above Manhattan. A roll of ordinary lick-and-stick first-class postage stamps. And one man in a small town you have never heard of used exactly one of those stamps a year for 60 years. To do something that the smartest, richest, most expensively educated people in the entire financial industry could not do. He beat them not for one lucky year. He beat the hedge funds, the mutual funds, the index funds, and the private wealth desks over decades, with no broker, no advisor, no app, no phone call, and no fee. His entire investment operation fit inside a number 10 envelope, one form, one stamp, once a year. The men who ran the billion-dollar funds would have laughed him out of the lobby. No Ivy League degree, no Series 7 license, no subscription to anything. He could not have told you what a derivative was. He had never heard the word alpha used to mean anything but the first letter of the Greek alphabet. And while they paid armies of analysts and supercomputers to shave fractions of a % off each other, he sat in a quiet house, licked a stamp, and let the most powerful force in finance do all the work for free. This is the story of the mailbox millionaire, the man who buried Wall Street with a postage stamp, and the absurdly simple machine, sitting in plain sight, available to almost everyone, used by almost no one, that made it possible. Let us begin where the story is supposed to begin. Not with him, with them. Picture the lobby of a great hedge fund. Marble floors polished to a mirror, security desks with 3 monitors each, a wall of frosted glass etched with a single austere logo. Behind that glass, 200 of the most credentialed human beings on the planet. Mathematics doctorates from Princeton. Physicists who left particle accelerators because the money was better here. Former chess prodigies. Coders who could model the weather. They are paid collectively hundreds of millions of dollars a year to do one single thing: beat the market. Now picture our man. He is standing on the sidewalk outside that building, though he will never actually go in because he has no reason to and no invitation to. He is wearing a windbreaker that is older than some of the analysts upstairs. He drove here in a car you would not look at twice, except he didn't, because he has never been to this city in his life. He is, in every way that the men behind the frosted glass would measure, a nobody. No portfolio they would manage, no assets they would acknowledge, no language in common. And here is the thing the men behind the glass do not know. Here is the thing that, if they knew it, would make several of them physically ill. Over the last 30 years, after every fee they charged, after every bonus they paid themselves, after every brilliant trade and every supercomputer cycle, this man in the windbreaker, doing nothing, calling no one, paying nobody, quietly outperformed the overwhelming majority of them. This is not an insult to those analysts. Many of them are genuinely brilliant. It is something stranger and more damning than an insult. It is arithmetic, and the arithmetic does not care about your degree. How is that possible? How does a man with no training, no tools, and no information advantage beat people whose entire lives are dedicated to this? To answer that, we have to meet him. And we have to understand the single, almost laughably simple machine that he plugged himself into and then never ever unplugged. His name does not matter, and that is partly the point. There are thousands of him. So let us call him what his town called him, the quiet man. He lived in a small place far from any exchange. A town with one main street, one diner, one hardware store, and a post office with a brass, fronted wall of little numbered boxes. He worked an ordinary job for an ordinary wage. The kind of wage that financial television assumes can never build wealth. He clocked in, he clocked out. He brought home a check that covered his life and left a thin margin on top. And it was that thin margin, that quiet gap that he turned into a weapon. Because here is what the quiet man understood, deep in his bones, that the men behind the frosted glass had complicated themselves out of understanding. He understood that he did not need to be smart. He needed to be relentless. One day, the town tells slightly different versions of when the quiet man read something. Maybe in a newspaper, maybe in a thin pamphlet a friend handed him. It described a thing that, at the time, almost no ordinary person knew about. A way to buy stock in a great American company, without ever speaking to a broker, without paying a commission, directly by mail. It was called a dividend reinvestment plan, a DRIP, and alongside it its sibling, the direct stock purchase plan. Together, they were the most powerful wealth-building machine available to an ordinary American, and almost no ordinary American was using them. Here is how the quiet man understood it, in his own plain words, the way he later explained it to the one or two people he ever told. You mail a company a form and a check. The company sends you, by return mail, a fraction of itself, shares. Every few months, that company takes some of its profit and mails its owners a portion of it, a dividend. But instead of taking that dividend as cash and spending it, you tell the company, keep it, buy me more of yourself with it, and it does automatically forever. Free. To the quiet man, this was not financial theory. It was a faucet that ran in the right direction. You opened it once, you never closed it, and the longer you left it open, the harder it ran on its own. So one evening, at his kitchen table, the quiet man did the thing that would, decades later, bury Wall Street. He filled out a single enrollment form. He wrote a modest check, small enough that no analyst on earth would have noticed it. Small enough that he barely noticed it himself. He folded the form around the check. He slid both into a number 10 envelope. He licked a single stamp, and he walked it down to the brass, fronted post office on Main Street, and dropped it through the slot. That envelope was the entire beginning. No champagne. No bell ringing on a trading floor. No congratulations. Just a small sound, the clink of a brass slot, and the quietest detonation in the history of his finances. A few weeks later, the return mail came, a statement, his name at the top, and beneath it, a number of shares. A small number, a beginning number, of a great American company. He now owned a sliver of one of the largest enterprises in the country. He had been let in, not through the frosted glass lobby, through his own mailbox. And then the machine began to run. A few months passed, and the company did what good companies do. It made a profit, and it mailed its owners their cut. But the quiet man's cut never arrived as a check. Because he had checked the box, instead a new statement came. He owned more shares than he had the quarter before. Not because he had mailed another dollar, he hadn't. The company had bought them for him, out of its own profits on his behalf, for free. Most people at this point feel nothing. The increase is tiny. A rounding error, a few extra fractional shares. And this is exactly where almost everyone gives up, not because they fail, but because the early returns are so boring that they cannot believe anything is happening. The quiet man did not give up, because he understood something the impatient never do. He understood that he was not trying to get rich this quarter. He was building a machine that would get rich for him over a span of time so long that most people cannot emotionally hold it in their heads. One stamp a year. That was his pace. Once a year he would sit at the kitchen table, send a little more money to feed the machine, confirm the box was still checked, and mail it off. One form, one stamp. And then he would walk away and let 60 years do the rest. Now let us do the thing the quiet man never bothered to do, because he didn't need to. Let us look at the actual arithmetic that was running silently inside his mailbox. Because once you see it, you will understand why no amount of genius behind the frosted glass could keep up. Money that compounds does not grow in a straight line. It grows on top of its own growth. A dollar earns a return. Then that return earns its own return. Then that earns its own. On a short time scale, this is nearly invisible. On a long time scale, it becomes a force that bends the chart almost vertical. Watch what happens to the quiet man's money over a working lifetime. Suppose he begins modestly and adds a little each year and earns the long-run return that great American companies have historically delivered to patient owners. Call it roughly 10% a year, dividends reinvested. In the first decade, the machine is unimpressive. A small pile becomes a slightly larger pile. In the second decade, something stirs. The pile begins to throw off real money on its own. In the third decade, the dividends alone, the cash the machine generates each year without him adding a cent, begin to exceed everything he ever contributed in the early years combined. And in the fourth and fifth and sixth decades, this is where it stops looking like saving and starts looking like sorcery. The portfolio is now so large, and the dividends it reinvests are now so substantial, that the machine is buying him more shares every single quarter than he could have afforded to buy in an entire year when he started. He is, at this point, doing nothing. He is licking one stamp a year, and the machine is making him richer, faster than his own paycheck ever did. Now place that next to the men behind the frosted glass. They are brilliant. They work 80-hour weeks, but they are fighting a war the quiet man simply opted out of. Every trade they make costs money. Every fund they run charges a fee. A slice off the top every single year, whether they win or lose. Every brilliant analyst they hire must be paid, and every one of those costs is a small hole drilled in the bottom of their boat. A fee of even 1 or 2% a year sounds trivial. It is not. Over 60 years of compounding, a fee of 2% a year does not cost you 2% of your money. It can quietly devour a third or more of your entire final fortune. The fee compounds against you exactly as your money compounds for you. It is a parasite that grows at the same speed as the host. So picture the race honestly. The fund manager is sprinting brilliantly in a boat with holes in the bottom. The quiet man is sitting perfectly still in a boat with no holes at all, in a current that carries him forward for free. Over a year, the sprinter looks faster. Over 60 years, the man who simply refused to leak crosses the finish line first, and it is not even close. We need to talk about the hardest part of the quiet man's strategy. It was not the math ran itself. The hardest part was the part where for 60 years he did almost nothing while the entire world screamed at him to do something. Think of everything that happened during those decades. Markets crashed not once, many times. There were years when the value on his statement fell by a third. There were 18-month stretches when nearly half of his paper fortune evaporated. The newspapers he read declared the system broken. Experts on television urged everyone to sell, to flee to cash, to get out before it all collapsed. The men behind the frosted glass were frantically repositioning, hedging, panicking in expensive and sophisticated ways. And the quiet man, during every single one of those crashes, he did the same thing. He kept the box checked. He let the dividends reinvest. He licked his one stamp that year and fed the machine a little more. And here is the secret the panic sellers never grasp. A crash to a man who is reinvesting dividends and never selling is not a disaster, it is a sale. When the market fell, the price of his companies fell with it. But the companies were still selling soap, still lending money, still moving freight, still paying dividends. And those dividends reinvested now bought him more shares than ever because the shares were on sale. Every crash, while everyone around him panicked, quietly handed the quiet man more of America at a discount. He was, in the worst moments, being made richer in shares than in any boom. This is why the quiet man's greatest skill was not intelligence. It was stillness. The ability to sit in a chair in a quiet house while the whole world told him to move. And to not move, to trust the machine, to trust the arithmetic, to trust that the boring companies he owned would keep doing the boring, profitable things they had done for 100 years. The men behind the frosted glass could not sit still. They were paid not to. Their clients demanded action, results, brilliance every quarter. A fund manager who sat perfectly still for 30 years doing nothing would be fired, even though sitting perfectly still for 30 years was mathematically the winning move. That is the cruel paradox at the centre of this whole story. The professionals could not afford to do the one thing that worked. The quiet man, answering to no one, could do nothing else. He slept well. He did not check prices. He could not have told you on any given day what his portfolio was worth. He had built a thing that did not require his attention, and so he gave it none. And that was precisely why it grew. For 60 years no one knew. That too is part of the pattern. The quiet man did not talk about money. He did not drop hints. He did not upgrade his car, his house, his clothes, or his life as the number on his statement climbed past a milestone that would have made most people dance in the street. His neighbours saw an old man in a windbreaker who mailed a letter once a year and otherwise kept to himself. His co-workers, long retired now, remembered a steady, unremarkable man who never spent $1 more than he had to. The teller at the small-town bank knew him as a face who came in occasionally and never made a fuss. None of them, not one, had any idea that the quiet man at the end of the street had assembled by mail a fortune that ran into the millions. And then, as these stories always must, there came a day when the quiet man was gone, and someone had to open the folder. Picture the lawyer, a local man who had known the quiet man for years and assumed, like everyone, that he was a person of modest means. He opens the folder expecting a small estate, a house, a car, a savings account, a few $1,000s to divide. Instead, he finds statements, dozens of them, from transfer agents at some of the largest companies in America. And on those statements are share counts. Not round numbers, long, strange numbers, thousands of shares, trailing into precise fractions. The fingerprints of 60 years of automatic reinvestment, every dividend folding back into more. The lawyer adds it up. Then he adds it up again, because he does not believe it the first time. The quiet man, the windbreaker, the one stamp a year, the man no fund would have managed and no analyst would have noticed, had died with a portfolio that beat the lifetime results of the overwhelming majority of the professionals. Who would have laughed him out of their lobby? He had no glass tower, no army of analysts, no supercomputer, no degree. He had a kitchen table, a checkbox, a faucet he never closed, and one stamp a year. And it was enough, more than enough, to bury them all. At this point you are probably asking the obvious question. If it is this simple, if a man with no training can bury Wall Street with a postage stamp, why does almost nobody do it? The answer is the most important lesson in this entire story. It is not simple to do. It is simple to understand. Those are two completely different things, and the gap between them is where almost every fortune is lost. First, the strategy is boring, almost unbearably boring. There is no thrill, no screen to watch, no story to tell at a party. Human beings are not built to do the same dull thing for 60 years, while feeling nothing happen for the first 20. We are built for action, for novelty, for the dopamine of doing something. The quiet man's entire genius was that he could tolerate doing nothing, better than almost anyone alive. Second, the strategy is invisible while it works. For the first decade or two, the gains are so small that every instinct screams that you are wasting your time. You will watch friends chase hot tips and brag about quick wins. You will feel like a fool for sitting still. Most people cannot withstand that feeling. They abandon the machine in year 5 or year 8, precisely the years before the curve begins to bend. They quit at the bottom of the hill and never see the mountain. Third, and this is the cruelest one, an entire industry profits from your not doing it. The fee-charging fund, the active manager, the advisor who needs you to trade, the financial media that needs you anxious and clicking. Every one of them earns more when you are active, afraid, and convinced that you need them. The quiet man's method threatens all of them, because it requires almost none of them. So the simplest, most powerful strategy in finance is also the one with the smallest marketing budget on earth. Nobody gets rich selling you a postage stamp, and so the machine sits there, available to almost everyone, used by almost no one. Not because it is hidden, because it is boring, invisible at first, and unprofitable for anyone to sell to you. The quiet man's only true advantage was that none of those three things could stop him. So let us translate the quiet man's 60 years into something you can begin this week. Because a story like this is only worth telling if it changes what you do tomorrow morning. 1. Open the faucet today in any amount. The quiet man's first envelope was small. The amount did not matter. What mattered was that the machine started running. Because the machine's most valuable ingredient is not money. It is time. Every year you wait is a year of compounding you can never get back. Start with a tiny automatic amount you will not miss. And start it now, not when you feel ready, because you will never feel ready. 2. Own the boring backbone of the economy broadly. The quiet man owns slices of great, dull, profitable American companies. You can own thousands of them at once, at near zero cost. Through a single broad market index fund, the modern, automated descendant of his hand, assembled portfolio. You do not need to find the next great company. You need to own all of them and let the winners carry the average. 3. Find the one checkbox that built his fortune and check it. In any modern brokerage account, there is a setting automatically reinvest dividends. Turn it on. This single click is the direct descendant of the quiet man's stamp. It tells your money, do not rest. Do not sit as cash. Do not wait for my permission. Every dividend, buy more forever. It is, without exaggeration, one of the most consequential clicks of your entire financial life, and it takes 3 seconds. 4. Make selling difficult and watching impossible. The quiet man's edge was stillness, and stillness in the modern world must be engineered, because your phone is built to destroy it. Delete the app that shows you the daily number. Turn off the alerts. Put friction, real friction, between yourself and the panic sell button. The quiet man's slowest feedback loop was a statement that came in the mail. Recreate that slowness on purpose, because the slower you look, the richer you become. 5. Decide. Now that crashes are your friend. There will be crashes, there always are. When they come and the headlines scream, and everyone you know panics, you must remember the quiet man in his armchair, checking the box, feeding the machine, buying America on sale while the geniuses fled. Write it on a card and tape it where you will see it. When it falls, I buy. I do not sell. I am the quiet man. That single sentence held for 40 years is worth more than any stock tip you will ever hear. Do those 5 things. Even imperfectly, even slowly, even while feeling like nothing is happening. And you are running the exact machine the quiet man ran. You will probably not need a postage stamp. Your stamp is a checkbox now, but the engine underneath it is identical. And it is just as patient, just as relentless, and just as capable of burying the geniuses, who will never understand how a man in a windbreaker out ran them all. Let us end where we began, the glass tower and the postage stamp. In the tower, the men behind the frosted glass are still working, still brilliant, still sprinting, still drilling, drilling small holes in the bottoms of their own boats with every fee, every trade, every brilliant unnecessary move. Some of them will win for a while. A few of them will even win for a long while. But the great mass of them, measured honestly across decades and after every cost, will be beaten by an idea so simple they would be embarrassed to say it out loud at a dinner party. And in the small town, on the kitchen table, the roll of stamps still sits. The quiet man is gone now. His fortune has scattered into the world to family, to causes, to a future he decided on long before the end. But the machine he used did not die with him. It is sitting in your reach right now, in the form of an account you can open today and a checkbox you can click in 3 seconds. We are told constantly that wealth is complicated, that it requires genius, access, connections, timing, secret information, a seat behind the frosted glass. The quiet man's entire life is a 60-year-long argument that this is a lie. He had none of those things. He had a faucet he never closed, a chair he refused to leave, and the rarest discipline on earth, the discipline to do almost nothing for almost forever, and to trust the arithmetic completely. If there is a thesis this channel returns to in every story, it is the one the quiet man proved with a stamp. Ordinary people doing one boring thing with extraordinary patience. Build slow fortunes. The genius in the tower chased the market with everything he had. The man in the windbreaker simply refused to let go and licked one stamp a year. And won. If you want more stories like this one, ordinary people who quietly buried the experts, subscribe. There are more quiet men out there than the world will ever count. We are only getting started.